We are not bad either. Actually, 70% of Swiss students are studying in Switzerland in a Shanghai 200 ranked university, so the level is pretty high. Our advantage is it is free, but we have certainly learned from the dynamism of U.S. companies. We have made lots of progress to facilitate spin-offs, intellectual property being used, the connection with the industry, supporting startups and so on. That's certainly one aspect. Another one where we have great examples, for example, the Technical University in Lausanne, the Federal Technical University, has become a very dynamic university, and they have looked at the U.S. model with financing, joint venture together with companies, really offering space and funding for startups and allowing this transition out of the labs to the economy. I think there we can learn, and probably the biggest lesson in the Swiss economy we can learn from the U.S. is, take a risk and you can fail. So,
well, that's good advice for life too, I guess. Yeah. All right, well, that is all I have for you today, Bruno. Thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you here.
Thank you, Sam. It's been a pleasure.
Welcome now to School Days, where we interview a guest about their own personal educational journey, the schools they went to, the experiences they had, and how that impacts where they are now. Today in School Days, we are joined by Natalie Brown, a first-year graduate student at the University of Chicago's Harris School of Public Policy. Natalie grew up in Palm Bay, Florida, and was kind enough to share with us her experiences attending a motley mix of schools and school types as she made her way through elementary, middle, and high school. Natalie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate being here. It was going to be fun.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on. All right, so let's start at the very beginning. What was your first formal schooling experience?
I can think back to preschool, but I feel like formalized is definitely elementary.
All right, tell me about your elementary school.
It was an interesting experience. My older sister went to my school ahead of me, and she was about 2 years ahead of me. So it was funny because all of the teachers would know my family and be like, okay, you're this person's sibling. Wow, great. And then I would I was usually a troublemaker. I was a big troublemaker in elementary school. So they would start with lighting up in their eyes, and it would really dim when they realized that I was a wild child. So it was really funny.
Your sister had a better reputation.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess I should probably say that my sister, she's special needs. She has autism. So she was always known as she's so sweet. She obviously still is. Taylor Ann's very sweet, very easygoing, chill. And then there's me, who's just the disruption of class. I was definitely the kid that would be talking in class or things like that, or just causing trouble. There may or may not have been a fight or two, but I am beyond my fighting days. So
it happens to the best of us.
Yeah. So it was funny. But I loved learning. So I definitely felt coursework I was really comfortable in. I think I just got bored, and that's why I caused trouble. Caused a lot of trouble.
What were the school facilities like? Was it a big school, small school? Did it have a gym, auditorium, things like that?
I would say pretty big. Well, no, I would say it's a pretty small school. I think that they did a good job of allocating space for us, even being a small school. When it comes to the student body itself, it wasn't a very big school at all. Probably in each grade, I think K through 5, there was maybe less than 100 students in each class. So it was pretty small in that respect. But it didn't feel small because I think we had a lot of small classes, a lot of thank goodness, a lot of faculty that could give us one-on-one attention. So it definitely didn't feel like a big school. Or sorry, it didn't feel like a small school.
Were there arts rooms, music rooms, things like that?
Yeah, we had a lot of those. Thinking back right now, we had especially art rooms, music rooms. We had a huge cafeteria for any sort of performances. It was a really nice space. It was a really cool space.
That sounds great. So it sounds like your teachers knew your family. Were most teachers there kind of consistent year to year?
It was really mostly teachers that had been there for 10, 15, 20 years
Mm-hmm.
that sent their children to the school. It was definitely like a very familial school where everyone knew everyone and kind of stayed around. It wasn't the norm for people to kind of like go from school to school in the area.
Mm-hmm.
I think also because there aren't that many schools in the area. So if you're going to be an elementary school teacher, you didn't have like as many options unless you wanted to go into like another county or just do something entirely different. Even like a subject, something
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Were the schools all assigned just based on geography, like where you lived? That's where you went to school.
Yeah, mostly. At least for elementary, it was all like based off of like zip code zoning and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so what do you remember? Is there anything you used to remember specifically about the curriculum? I know you said there was good arts and music. Was there anything like the way they taught math or history or anything that sticks out to you when you remember back?
I mean, thinking back to elementary school, it's hard. I think about math. I think most particularly just because I think, well, this just generally speaks for I think my experience. I think a lot of women and also like women of color definitely are told that like math and like science are not necessarily even told, like just signaled that those aren't really like subjects that you're like gonna be excelling in or that are gonna be like places that you can do your best in. So I remember in math really enjoying math when I was growing up, but always feeling like, oh, I'm not very good at it. And kind of like having that kind of compounded over the years until it was kind of canceled out by like, you know, lived experience. Like, oh, I actually do like math. But in elementary school, I think that was the beginning of I like math, but I'm kind of being signaled that it's not for me and me moving away from it. Even though I to this day, I love math. So, yeah.
All right, great. So after a stellar elementary school career with a bump or two along the way, but mostly stellar, on to middle school. How was your middle school?
I went to 3 different schools throughout my middle school time.
Okay.
So in 6th grade, I went to one school. That was a really good experience. I was trying really, really hard. Like I think I was still kind of like fighting against like I like math, but like people tell me that I should not do math. So there was a program that my mom was trying to put me out of. Like I was trying to get into. It was like an advanced math course. That she was like, you don't need that. Math's not your strength. But she made me go to the regular course. It's a lot, but that was like my first year of middle school where I was like trying to go into math and I was kind of being pulled back. Like, no, like, you're not very good at it. Like, don't worry about it. So that was first year, 6th grade. So in 7th grade, I switched to the charter school.
And wait, first, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, sorry, no. Yeah.
For that 6th grade middle school, did everyone from your elementary school kind of go up into that middle school?
Yeah.
So
It was basically like a process. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then so for 7th grade, you go to a charter school.
Yeah. So I switched over because we had moved to a different part of town. That like we were like, it would be more convenient for my parents to send me to the charter school, like when it comes to like dropping me off and like going to work and things like that. So like, yeah, you just go here. It makes sense. I did not like this school because it just felt very like I was there to fill boxes, not there to like genuinely like learn and like, you know, grow as a like budding young person. It was definitely like this is what like the FCAT, like it's a test you have to take for in Florida. Like, yeah, this is what you need to know for that. So we're gonna take some tests and we're gonna you know how to do this. So there's nothing else to like go into. It definitely felt like a lot like more bored, more like why am I here? What was the point?
Was the school really kind of strict and regimented in the classes and everything?
No, not really at all. That was the whole thing. It was like you only worked on stuff that contributed to your test scores, which I think was related to funding for them.
Interesting.
Reflecting more about it now, like it's probably is more related to like continued streams of funding and less on like student engagement and fulfillment, which I thought was like.
What were the teachers there? Had they been there for long, or was there younger teachers and more churn?
They were from all different types of backgrounds. Some were like older teachers I think had taught in different places. Some of them had were starting their careers out. It was a very transitional school.
So a new one for 8th grade too.
And that's where I ended up going to high school for the rest of my time in like pre-college. That school was one you had to apply into. So that school I had to like have an interview and like do tests and stuff, which was really intimidating. But it was a
public school, private school.
It's weird. They call it a school of choice. I don't really know exactly what that means in terms of like, you know, coding for like a level of public versus private. But it wasn't like the same. You can't like your zip code was not enough to like get you into school. You had to have an external application as well.
There was no tuition or anything though.
No, it was no tuition or anything like that.
Okay.
So it was this weird hybrid of kind of like a private public experience. But it was like it was definitely like one of the best schools in the area, and I was really, really happy to be able to go there. Took way too many AP courses, way too many. Great music program, great.
Yeah, they have good
like
extra. They have a lot of extracurriculars there.
Yeah, a lot of like good sports and extracurriculars in that sense. There's also like a TV production team, so that was really interesting. And radio as well. I never.
Oh, we're bringing you back.
I never did the radio there, so I'm living vicariously. Like, or is
yes,
yeah, I'm doing it here. So
it's come later to haunt you, I guess.
That's a way to put it. That's a good way to put it.
Tried to run away, but we're coming back.
It's now or never.
So it sounds like you took advantage of the extracurriculars. It sounds like you took advantage of a lot of the class offerings too. There was a lot of AP classes. Was there a lot of like advanced classes for students who wanted to take them?
Yeah, I definitely was able to really kind of take just about whatever I wanted. I think, as I mentioned before, kind of like I took a lot of like the literature and like social sciences APs, and really like I felt like I did well in them. But the math ones were also kind of off limits for me. I think it's because like as you each year of school builds on the next one, so trying to pivot into like a harder coursework when you're later down the line is a lot more difficult when there's like foundational stuff that you haven't really like studied.
It sounds like there was kind of a little bit of tracking where at a certain you could track yourself in certain subjects. Did that start like freshman year, sophomore year?
It started in 8th grade.
In 8th
so the
grade.
moment, I mean, even I didn't. So the school technically starts in 7th grade. Not technically, it starts in 7th grade. That you can enroll in middle school and then you transition into high school. So from 7th grade, like your tracking starts. Where if you choose the advanced course in 7th grade, you go into advanced in 8th, and if you go to advanced in 8th, you start like pre-calculus in 9th. Versus I did pre-calculus my junior year. Actually, no, my senior year. So you're immediately being pushed into different directions depending on what courses you choose. And most students that start on the advanced track were doing like calculus AB and AP and statistics and things like that I wish I could have done a little bit earlier. But yeah.
Were there any really interesting classes or unique classes you think that the school offered?
There was a course, it's an AP course called Human Geography that was something that when I saw on the course roster, I remember I think I was like a junior in high school and thought, what the heck is this? Like, this is what kind of course description is this?
Sounds like a funky way to say anatomy.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you say that because the course was like, the way it was structured was like thinking about the anatomy of like locations and how humans change the structure of them to suit our needs, or how maybe sometimes we can't change the structure of them to suit our needs, and how we like assign value or just usefulness to places, and how people naturally like collect and change environments. And it was really interesting, something that I think I would have loved to. I'd love to take a course again today. I think I have a different perspective on a lot of the material, but it was very eye-opening at a high school level to think about things like that, like how humans are so influential and have so much capacity for change in like environments.
Was it helpful later on in college and beyond, do you think, to have that kind of coursework that early?
Definitely. It was a lead up to a lot of like the college learning that I had. I definitely felt like a lot of the coursework that I was in was like definitely like very simplified, and taking that course was like, I think AP courses in general are marketed as like pre-college, but that really felt like this is what a college class will feel like. I think that's probably the most equivalent I could think of comparison to like being in a lecture and like engaging with a professor and like learning in that way.
What was the college counseling like at this school? Did they encourage everyone to go to college? Was it kind of 50-50?
So everyone was encouraged to go to college. That was a huge thing. Everyone was encouraged to go. It was where you would go that was a big thing. So when I had my first college advising meeting my junior year, when we start thinking about like I think it's called the PSAT. Gosh, those are way
Just bringing you back to.
You're really bringing back the trauma. Just kidding. Yeah, I remember she kind of gave me like a list of schools that she like assumed would be things that I would like, or places I would want to go to, and I had different ideas for where I wanted to go. So that was an interesting kind of like dilemma there, where I'm like, I think I want to go to Yale, and she's like, you can go to University of Central Florida. I'm like, oh, that is just not matching up. So that was a little bit of an interesting bump where they kind of like, they assess you within the class and tell you what they think you should go to, which I felt kind of limiting, but I decided to go my own way. I'm happy that I did.
Did they